The night was quiet until it wasn't. Streets slept under a low, humid sky, and Atlanta breathed soft. Then a single frame shattered the calm. A shaky clip. Grainy, half-seen faces, an SUV door, laughter that looked too familiar. 30 seconds on someone's phone. 30 seconds that turned private into public. The city woke to a sound it knew too well. The ping of notifications, the low hiss of a timeline igniting. At first it was whispers, the kind that curl around bar counters and salon chairs, private murmurs that travel faster than you expect. Then the whispers multiplied. Then they became a pulse. Then they were a roar. A neighborhood group chat blew up. A late-night blogger posted the first screen grab. By sunrise, the clip had its own gravity. People who lived to catch drama got up and went hunting. Someone blurred the faces, someone else slowed the footage, and someone else edited in a beat that made it feel cinematic. The city recognized the shapes. A hand on a lower back, a laugh that sounded like permission, a closeness that held accusation. Cameras found the parking lot where it happened. Phones found each other. The streets leaned into the story like listeners at a pulpit. It wasn't just a clip. It was a detonator. Rumors that had floated for months suddenly had proof pinned to them. The feeds chewed it up and spat it out. Comments arrived like verdicts. People chose sides in seconds. The first shockwave wasn't just about what the camera caught. It was about what the camera made everyone feel: exposed, entertained, entitled. By noon, the city felt different. Smaller, louder, hungrier. It moved faster than rumor. By dawn, the clip had become evidence and entertainment at the same time. It raced through platforms that survive on scandal. Twitter threads erupted. TikTok loops replayed the smallest gestures. Instagram stories condensed the moment into endless fragments. Bloggers pushed hungry headlines while creators layered beats in slow motion until the scene felt scripted. Memes surfaced in minutes, looped GIFs of a smile, snarky captions, remix audios that turned a private whisper into a viral hook. The city dissected each frame like a case file. Hashtags hardened into verdicts. Kirk and Jasmine trended so fast it sounded like a warning. Caught again became shorthand for humiliation. Radio hosts folded the footage into debate segments. Group chats acted like juries and delivered fast, loud sentences. People drew conclusions from angles, from laughter, from the way a hand rested against someone's back. Some messages held sympathy for Rasheeda. Many held mockery. A smaller chorus defended Jasmine. PR teams scrambled for damage control, while influencers monetized the chaos with reaction videos. Clips were slowed. Audio was added. Dramatic captions framed every loop as proof. Screenshots became evidence in comment threads. The appetite for spectacle turned messy and immediate. Take, remix, repost, repeat. Kirk's phone filled with drafts and deletions. Jasmine posted a selfie as if nothing happened, and that only fueled the fire. The feeds decided before the facts did. They judged, reposted, and moved on within hours. The morning starts ordinary. Coffee steam curling in the kitchen, light leaking through the blinds. But normal collapses in a single heartbeat when Carly bursts in like an alarm. She doesn't knock. Her voice is sharp, urgent, too quick to be kind. Rasheeda looks up confused, the moment already unspooling into something worse. Carly's hand shakes as she holds out a phone. "I wish I was joking," she says, and the words have no humor. One look at that looping clip and Rasheeda's calm fractures. The image plays, slowed frames, that laugh, that familiar touch on a lower back, and her face drains of color. Silence swallows the room for a heartbeat, then blooming heat floods her chest. For a second, she doesn't move. Then the coffee slips from her fingers, dribbling down her hoodie like evidence. Her breath stutters. Memory collides with pixels. The betrayal isn't a rumor now. It's a moving thing on a screen, a living proof that someone else got what was meant to be private. Carly and Kendra hover like lifelines. Their faces are both gentle and hard. They know the script. They've watched this movie. Rasheeda steadies herself with an iron quiet that looks almost strategic. But rage is patient. It organizes itself. At first, she seems to breathe through it. Slow, measured, as if counting to a calm that won't come. Then the hurt cracks open and the quiet shatters into anger. She slams the phone on the table. The screen fractures with the impact, as if the glass finally tried to contain what it had already exposed. Her voice goes cold and clipped. "How stupid do I look?" she says. And the words are small but sharp, each one a blade. She remembers promises, tearful apologies, late-night vows to change. The room tightens. Carly reaches to touch her arm and Rasheeda jerks away like she's been burned. The humiliation is hot now and it tastes like iron. Kendra's jaw sets. Carly's eyes glisten with anger and defensive love. Outside, the city is already awake. Phones are chiming like distant thunder. Somewhere, someone has turned this private wound into public sport. Rasheeda's hands ball into fists. She refuses to be reduced to a punchline. Her face is a stone, pained, furious, resolved. She will not beg. She will not perform for them. The first shock is a collapse into silence. The second is a rising up into a cold, dangerous clarity. This is the moment where hurt makes a decision. Her mind flickers through faces and late apologies. She imagines headlines and the merciless captions they will write. Anger settles into a plan. Not today, not for them. Friends watch for the second when she might break, but she is already choosing a different response, one that will reframe the story on her terms. She breathes again, steadies, and in that hold, the shape of what she'll do next becomes clear. Now, Carly and Kendra are anchors in the storm, but anchors that know when to pull and when to let the tide have its way. Each reaction laced with history and protection. They remind Rasheeda, without being cruel, of the pattern, past slips, promises, and the painful ritual of forgiveness that followed. Their words land like cataloged evidence, a catalog she'd rather not flip through, but the pages keep turning. Carly moves between anger and care, a quick, sharp judgment about how Kirk should have known better, and a softer hand when she sees Rasheeda's lips tighten. Kendra bristles with a fiercer kind of loyalty that smells of long friendship and private oaths. She refuses to let the city normalize Rasheeda's humiliation. They trade small, strategic plans out loud, because in chaos, practical things feel like control. Stay off socials, record nothing impulsively, don't feed the vultures. At the same time, they bookend her emotion with stories that remind her she isn't the only one who was burned, that resilience has a shape, and it can be worn like armor. There are whispered warnings about lawyers and drafts of statements. There are stronger whispers about what revenge only fools brag about, and what power looks like when it is quiet and deliberate. The atmosphere mixes fury with tenderness. It feels like a war room being run by three women who refuse to be surprised again. Carly's humor is sharp as a scalpel, sometimes cutting to relieve the pressure, while Kendra's silence speaks louder than most pep talks. They steady Rasheeda with a mix of truth and tactical thinking, both refusing pity and offering options. Together, they move from shock into strategy, and that momentum is the first real weapon against the spectacle the feeds are cooking up. They vow aloud to stay with her through every messy headline, to call a lawyer if needed, to draft a measured message, and to be present at every public moment where she chooses to show up. Their loyalty is both shelter and strategy, a network already leaning into action. They will not let the story define her. To action. They will not let the story define her. Kirk stepped into the house like a man walking into a crossing he had misread, slow and deliberate, as if speed could erase consequence. He expected soft. He found witnesses. The door clicked shut and the sound carried like a verdict. He held his hands up and said the usual, "Babe, let me explain." Words scraped thin from repetition. Rasheeda's eyes did not soften. They measured him cold and clear. Around them, the room hummed with the city. Distant camera flashes, the constant ping of notifications, the low electric roar of a timeline that had already decided. He moved forward, practiced apology on his lips. His gestures looked familiar, recycled. He tried to bridge the gap with touch, with softness. Each attempt was a plea she refused. Carly and Kendra stood like shorelines, unyielding. Carly's arms folded in a warning. Kendra's mouth set in quiet anger. They had been through this pattern enough to read its script. Promises, apologies, the slow loop back into hurt. Kirk offered explanations that dissolved as he spoke. She came to me. It wasn't like that, we just talked. The words fell flat against the evidence that had already circulated. A parking lot, an SUV, a clip slowed and scored with music to make it cinematic. Outside, someone shouted a name. A camera flashed at the gate. The private space had become public theater. Phones lifted like shutters. The sound of distant lenses was a percussion that kept time with Rasheeda's rising pulse. His defenses unraveled into fragments of denial and bargaining. I didn't touch her. I swear, you know me. Each plea sounded smaller in a room where 1,000 strangers had already judged. She listened, collecting each line like a witness cataloging testimony. Then she spoke and the house leaned in. "Don't say my name like you care," she said, voice flat and unwavering. It landed as if measured on a scale. The words were short and surgical. He fumbled through the old playbook. Tears, promises, the ritualized regret. And outside, the noise grew. Bloggers chimed in. Feeds looped the clip. Reaction videos multiplied. His phone buzzed like a live wire. He glanced, flinched, and shoved it back into his pocket. Carly moved closer, voice low, issuing a practical line that read like an ultimatum more than comfort. Kendra watched Kirk as if cataloging evidence for a future verdict. The living room had shifted roles. It was home and courtroom, bedroom and public square. Kirk reached again, perhaps to soothe or to beg. Rasheeda recoiled as if the touch might burn her. That single recoil was its own footage in the minds of everyone present. It needed no replays. He tried to barter with memory, remember our nights, our vows. But she counted promises and found them bankrupt. She named the pattern, precise and cold, and refused the offer of a quick fix. The door stayed ajar, letting in the chorus of the city. Paparazzi lenses blinked like distant stars. Voices from outside pressed into the room until the house felt small and focused. Kirk's posture shrank. His practiced swagger melted under the pressure of exposure. Inside, Rasheeda collected herself with a fierce composure that was not weakness, but calculation. She noted every sliver of proof, every failed apology, letting the silence speak until it carried weight. That silence prepared the crowd for the verdict she alone would announce. By the time he left, shoulders low and face stripped of the practiced charm, the arrival that had promised a soft landing had instead begun the unraveling. The house that had once been a shelter now marked the point of rupture, and every footstep he took away echoed like the start of something final. Rasheeda made the living room a place of reckoning, speaking with a measured calm that made each accusation land like currency. She traced the pattern: late nights, empty promises, apologies drained by repetition, and named moments he'd offered as proof of change. Kirk's replies began as denials and curdled into thin excuses. He tried to split intent from impact, to argue proximity wasn't guilt, but his words had no purchase against the clip and the city's chorus. She cataloged specifics without melodrama: dates, admissions, risks taken, the slow erosion of faith. Each item pulled another thread from a fraying fabric. His voice faltered. He reached for nostalgia and for mercy, offering ritual apologies that now sounded cheap. The footage had given his gestures a theater quality that betrayed sincerity. Carly and Kendra were steady witnesses. Carly's compassion mixed with anger. Kendra's loyalty was immediate and protective. They had memory on their side. They'd seen this pattern rewind before. Accusation hardened into scrutiny as Rasheeda pressed for accountability. "Don't call me babe," she said, because it had become an empty word used to gloss harm. Her words were clinical and sharp, delivered with force. Kirk attempted to negotiate with memory. Remember our good nights. Think of the kids. But nostalgia could not cover live footage. He pleaded and minimized, but the room treated those distinctions as irrelevant in the face of repeated betrayal. Phones chimed outside. Feeds looped the clip into verdicts. A neighbor's live stream magnified a flinch. Paparazzi lenses blinked at the gate. The private scene was a public document. Rasheeda's accusations turned practical. She spoke of trust as a ledger with withdrawals and no deposits, a bank account exhausted by transgressions. She listed the tangible ways he'd broken promises, missed texts, late apologies, lies, and the cumulative weight made forgiveness impossible to grant on demand. Kirk's defenses narrowed to pleas. "I'm sorry, I swear," and silence when asked direct questions. He could not answer whether he had considered her when he acted, and that silence was condemnation. Carly tightened her jaw. Kendra's hands curled into a fist of restraint. They watched to catalog truth. The living room had become home and tribunal. Words were evidence. Her tone shifted from accusation to clarity as she outlined consequences. No more private reconciliations, no more public apologies without accountability. She spoke of boundaries, of lawyers on standby, of carefully curated silence that meant strategy, not surrender. Kirk's pleas lost urgency. He scrolled his phone in a panic, eyes glazed by headlines. Outside, the hum of commentary swelled into a tide. The friends exchanged a look that said they would not allow the pattern to continue anymore. In the end, Rasheeda refused to give him redemption through performative regret. She would not supply forgiveness bought with empty vows. The showdown closed with her resolve intact and his defenses diminished. The friends who stood by her left, the room ready to protect the boundaries she had drawn. The house had hosted the unmasking, and the public outside had already started writing the judgment. The feeds moved fast, surgical and ruthless, turning a private moment into a public artifact everyone felt licensed to dissect. Screenshots multiplied like evidence tags, each frame cropped and magnified until the smallest gesture carried a new grammar of accusation. Creators slowed the clip, looped a smile, and layered dramatic beats until casual movement read like choreography. Then, editors added slow motion and stacked captions that invited judgment. Comment sections became courtrooms and confessional booths at once, where verdicts arrived in capital letters and cold emojis. Influencers stitched reactions. Reaction videos multiplied like echoes, and each echo bent the story a little further toward spectacle. Memes turned pain into punchlines, snarky captions, ironic audio, remixed loops that made private tenderness look theatrical and guilty. Hashtags hardened into shorthand, quick labels that organized outrage or pity depending on whose pocket the algorithm favored. Radio hosts threaded clips into debate segments, pundits parsed body language like expert witnesses, and late-night feeds turned the smallest glance into a thesis on character. Some corners offered sympathy for Rasheeda. Others traded cruelty like currency. A smaller, defensive chorus protected Jasmine, while many reveled in the spectacle of a marriage on display. PR operatives drafted statements in real time, lawyers skimmed screenshots for threats, and opportunists monetized the chaos with sponsored hot takes. Even local DJs remixed a laugh into an audio hook that trended for hours. The clip mutated through platforms. TikTok loops made it viral. Twitter threads built the storyline. Instagram stories condensed the arc into punchy frames, and blogs stitched it into a narrative that read like inevitability. People felt entitled to a stance, and stances moved fast. Angles were argued, frames were frozen and annotated. Slow-motion edits suggested intention where there might have been none. Everyday feeds treated the footage like evidence. The commentariat treated it like sport. In that scramble, nuance was a casualty. Context dissolved under the speed of reposts and reaction. The city watched its own reflection in a screen and applauded or jeered, depending on the angle. Within hours, the moment had become both public record and entertainment, and the messy, gleaming machinery of online culture had already decided much of what would be said about everyone involved. Rasheeda felt the noise pressing in, sharp, hungry, loud, and she decided it would fuel her, not finish her. Hurt came first. Stunned, shallow breaths, a body that felt both brittle and awake. She waited out the first wave, refusing to perform for cameras, keeping her silence as a form of control. Friends circled like slow flames. Then she turned inward and counted what she had learned from each past fracture. Those lessons were not trophies of pain, but tools of survival. Boundaries, consequences, clear demands that would no longer be negotiable. The humiliation that could have become a public collapse instead reshaped into cold clarity. She watched the feeds and treated them as a thermometer, measuring heat, not dictating the remedy. Anger settled into strategy. Fury organized itself into a list of practical moves. Where once she might have pleaded, now she cataloged. Where once she might have begged for promises, now she prepared terms. The shift was subtle and fierce, small, deliberate decisions replacing frantic reaction. She rehearsed a voice that would not beg. She rehearsed phrasing that would not be edited into weakness. She imagined an address that would center truth and refuse spectacle. In private, she mapped outcomes, what dignity looked like in action, what accountability looked like in demands, what victory might feel like beyond applause. The idea of reclaiming the narrative became not an ego trip, but a strategy for survival. Limit contact, control the timing of disclosures, enlist legal counsel, and stage every public moment with purpose. She refused to be played by the algorithm or flattened by meme culture. Even her silence was staged now. It was deliberate fuel, not absence. Each measured breath tightened her resolve. The rage that once threatened to consume became a stern tool, precise, cold, effective. She would not perform a breakdown for likes. She would not bargain for quick forgiveness. Instead, she chose to speak on her terms, to make one line cut deeper than 1,000 reruns. She planned with surgical calm, choosing when to speak and how to make them listen. Rasheeda sets the phone on a plain table and breathes slow. No makeup, no theatrics. She will not cry for the cameras. She hits record and speaks in a voice that is both calm and cold. Short sentences, long sentences, rhythm like a metronome. She opens with the fact everyone already has. You saw the clip. She does not ask for sympathy. She does not beg for understanding. She names the pattern without roar, promises broken, apologies repeated, trust withdrawn. She refuses to compress her life into a viral moment. She refuses to be the spectacle. Her phrasing is surgical. She says, "I am not your entertainment." She draws boundaries aloud. She explains consequences in plain terms. Less contact, firm boundaries, accountability, and legal counsel if needed. She pauses to let weight land. She does not supply theatrical tears or dramatic collapse. She offers clarity instead, what she will accept and what she will not accept ever again. She calls out the culture that profits from humiliation and refuses to feed it. She frames her hurt as a choice point, not a plea. She reclaims the narrative by naming what must change. She closes with a deliberate, simple line. I will not be silenced. Her eyes hold the camera like a witness. Her tone is even, her resolve visible. The clip that tried to define her now amplifies her voice instead. The message is short, sharp, and viral in a new way, not because it begs for pity, but because it demands respect. She stops recording and sits quiet. The silence after the video is part of the statement. The pause is intentional. Her agency is public now. She chooses next steps with clarity, not chaos, and the city notices immediately quietly. Kirk's camp moves like clockwork. PR strategists and close friends talk in controlled bursts on group chats. They debate tone, sorrow, silence, or deflection. The consensus lands on a short, crafted apology designed to humanize without producing loopable sound bites. Scripts are rehearsed: what to say, what to avoid, how to own a line that cannot be remixed into a hook. Meanwhile, messaging teams leak curated distractions, charity clips, staged family photos, and carefully timed posts meant to reset attention. Influencers in his orbit are asked to pivot to feel-good angles, while smaller accounts are seeded with talking points that soften the narrative. Jasmine posts a neutral selfie. Commentators interpret posture. Inside their circle, panic flickers, but the team insists on patience and precision now firmly. Drafts circulate that test vulnerability without admissions. The goal is to sound human while avoiding lines worth looping. Allies cook up diversion. Trending audios, reaction videos from unbothered friends, and nostalgic montages that remind viewers of earlier goodwill. Meanwhile, digital sleuths keep feeding the fire. Deep dives into past photos, timeline comparisons, and speculative threads that create new angles to discuss. Kirk's phone lights up with counsel and drafts. He oscillates between posting and deleting. PR warns against interviews. They fear live moments that can be clipped and weaponized. Legal counsel recommends restraint. Words matter now more than they ever did. The chatter becomes its own force. Pundits parse body language, late-night hosts crack jokes, and bloggers declare early verdicts. Some voices call for empathy, others sharpen for public punishment. The algorithm amplifies whichever angle gains traction. In the control rooms, the team argues and recalibrates, trying to steer a narrative that wants to run away. They buy time, craft the lines, and hope the next move blunts the momentum. When Rasheeda finally steps back into public view, the moment feels engineered for history. The venue is bright, cameras lined like soldiers, flashes bursting in rhythm. The crowd hums with a mix of awe and curiosity. They've seen her pain dissected, looped, and meme-fied, but not her power. She arrives late enough to be deliberate, walking through a corridor of murmurs and cell phone lights that shimmer like electric applause. Her outfit is a statement in motion. Clean lines, sharp shoulders, muted tones that speak louder than sequins ever could. It's not revenge dressing. It's reclamation dressing. Power without performance. Her chin is high, her steps unhurried, her eyes forward. She has turned spectacle into stagecraft. The audience rises as she appears, a low murmur swelling into cheers that sound like release. Phones lift, hashtags ignite again, but this time the energy feels different. She isn't trending because she's wounded. She's trending because she's steering the story. When she takes the microphone, her voice is calm and centered. No apology, no over-explaining, just presence. "You all know what they said," she begins, the line half challenge, half invitation. "But what they didn't show was how I stood back up." The applause cuts through like thunder. For a beat, the noise of the outside world, the gossip, the blogs, the analysis, evaporates. In its place stands control. Kirk's camp watches from screens, quiet and uneasy. Jasmine posts a story about peace and moving forward, but the timing feels transparent. Meanwhile, journalists frame Rasheeda's appearance as a masterclass in resilience marketing, calling it the moment she won the narrative. Her fashion becomes a metaphor. Her walk becomes a statement. The clip of her standing under the spotlight, serene, unbothered, victorious, circulates faster than the scandal ever did. The algorithm that once punished her now crowns her as the comeback queen. Even her silence between words feels choreographed, each pause carrying weight. What had begun as chaos ends as choreography, and the crowd witnesses the transformation in real time. When she exits, flashes chase her, but she doesn't flinch. She's no longer reacting. She's conducting. Each camera click is an endorsement, not an intrusion. The noise that once consumed her now follows her lead. The power has shifted, and everyone can feel it. The dust settles, but nothing returns to what it was. Kirk retreats from view, posting motivational quotes that fool no one. Jasmine's page turns quiet, her confidence dimmed by whispers and dwindling support. The audience, once entertained by scandal, now rallies behind Rasheeda, the woman who didn't crumble, who turned exposure into elevation. Her video message becomes a trending audio. Her public appearance spawns think pieces about strength and control. The industry takes note. Vulnerability alone doesn't sell anymore. Mastery does. Within Atlanta's circles, the power map redraws itself. Allies reposition. Brands reach out. The same city that once mocked now admires. But beneath the calm surface, stories keep brewing. New secrets, quiet alliances, and rumors of who leaked the original footage. Rasheeda knows this isn't the end. It's the start of Act 2. The final shot lingers on her reflection in the mirror, steady, unreadable, and already planning the next move. The screen fades to black, and the question hovers like a spark. When the next wave hits, who will stand tall and who will drown?